So I'm not here tonight to speak as an elected official or an elected official to be. I'm here really to speak about the painting Washington's Crossing. And Mort took me on a tour of his paintings at the Nassau County Museum of Art back in 2010, after I had lost my race for county executive. And he described to me how he took such pain to find out the intricate details, to make sure that his paintings were accurate. He would speak to military leaders, he would speak to historians, he would research things to make sure that everything was very, very accurate. And of course he became, and is today, as described by the Director of Communications for the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the most important historic artist in America today. And most of it, he's well known for his Civil War paintings mainly, but in the New Nation you'll see there's a great collection as well. And he described to me how he had been requested by the, I forget what it is, the Adjutant General of West Point to do a painting of Washington's watch chain, which were big cast iron links that were laid across the Hudson River at West Point to stop the ships, the British ships, from being able to ply the Hudson River. And I went off in my head, Washington, because he was known for his Civil War painting. Washington and accuracy, and I had read the book 1776 by David McCullough. And in this book, it talked about Washington's experience as the head of the Continental Congress. And everything went wrong for him in 1776. He lost battle after battle after battle. He had some success up in Boston, but then he came down to Manhattan and lost in Manhattan. He crossed the East River into Brooklyn, and they got wiped out in Brooklyn, also known as the Battle of Long Island. And the great success of that battle was that they were able to evacuate, the largest Marine act evacuation in the history of the world, even more than Dunkirk. And then he came back to Manhattan, lost again. They got chased up to Harlem, they lost in Harlem. They crossed the Hudson River, they lost in New Jersey, Fort Lee, New Jersey. They crossed the New Jersey, losing. Washington at this time is writing back home about how, what have I done? He's talking about the Mount Vernon and the history of Mount Vernon, and people are dying. He's lost tens of thousands of soldiers. He only started with 30,000 soldiers. He's down to about 12,000 soldiers. And you know, the stories about the soldiers walking with the blood you could see in the snow because their shoes were wearing out, this was happening as they were crossing New Jersey, and people had disease. And the British, who were winning fabulously, are mocking Washington because Washington was not a British trained soldier. They considered him a dilettante who didn't know the proper training of being a British trained soldier. In fact, some of the British trained soldiers under Washington's command looked at him askance. He's the wrong guy for the job. He shouldn't be doing this. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's losing all these battles. In fact, it was his right-hand man, Washington's right-hand man, who Washington said how much he loved the guy, wrote a letter to another person in the army and said Washington's the wrong guy for the job. And through a total happenstance, Washington intercepted the letter and found out that his right-hand guy had betrayed him. So now everything's going wrong. People are questioning his judgment. They're losing, and the British are offering amnesty. If you get out now, we won't kill you. And it's in the winter. So they cross the Delaware into Pennsylvania. And everything's so bad that Thomas Paine, who was very well known in American history for the pamphlet Common Sense that got everybody psyched up for the Revolutionary War in the first place, writes another pamphlet. And he's going to try and get everybody excited again about the war. And he writes the pamphlet, and he goes down to Philadelphia to get it printed because they're in Pennsylvania now. If the British follow them into Pennsylvania and go into Philadelphia, the war is over. This is where the Declaration of Independence was signed. So he writes this pamphlet. All the printers are gone from Philadelphia. You can't get it printed right away. He goes, all the Continental Congress has left and gone down to Baltimore because they're afraid if the British come, it's all going to be over. He finally gets it printed, and the first line of the American crisis was, "These are the times that try men's souls." I didn't realize that was a quote from that time. We all think that's like Charles Dickens or something like that. That was Thomas Paine talking about how desperate these times were. And Washington says, after all these things going wrong, he says, we must have a stroke, something to get everybody excited again. And they decide they're going to cross the Delaware on Christmas Day of 1776. And the weather is horrible. It's terrible. It's snowing. It's sleeting. The river is choked with ice. And he's going to cross with 800 people, and there's another 800 people downriver, and another 1,200 people down the river. and they're going to cross on Christmas night, and the next morning they're going to attack, and they're going to meet up on the other side and attack before sunrise. Well, the other two groups of soldiers don't make it across. That's how bad the weather was. And Washington makes it across with great difficulty. They get there late, the sun has already risen, and they decide, what should we do? And in fact, things are so desperate that each soldier has a little piece of paper that they're carrying with them that has the code word for the battle: victory or death. Everybody's got a little slip of white paper to identify whether victory or death. And he decides he's going to go ahead. He moves forward despite everything that's gone wrong to the state, and he attacks at Trenton after he crosses the Delaware, and he beats the Hessians and the British at that location, and he changes the whole course of human history. So the painting that we know of Washington crossing the Delaware, the famous one, is he's standing in the front of the ship, and the sun is shining. It's the middle of the night. And he's got a flag in the background. It's completely, that flag didn't exist yet. There was no such flag like that at all. And Mort and I did research together. Mort did most of the research, obviously, and found that it was probably not a rowboat or what's called a dory boat that he traveled. It was a flat-bottom boat, a ferry, a conquist ferry. That probably is the way it went. Because how would you get the cannons across? How would you get the horses across? And at first, Mort didn't want to do it. I asked him Mort, would you please paint the accurate painting of Washington crossing the Delaware? He says, oh, I don't know. That's too famous a painting. I don't know about that. Maybe I'll do a Washington on a horse on one side of the river, or maybe on the other side of the river after he's crossed. And I said, no, I want to do the accurate painting of him crossing, what really happened, the desperate times, to show how difficult this was.
So I have to interrupt to say, I didn't know anything about it at the time, and you knew much more about it than I did. As we progressed, we did the research together, and the rest is back to you.
Mort said, I don't know if I can go against that fake, the Leutze painting of Washington crossing the Delaware is the most visited painting in the entire Metropolitan Museum of Art every year. 20 some odd feet across. I want Mort to paint this painting in a 20 size. If you all put the money up, we can get him to do it. He said, I don't know if I can go against that painting. I said, Mort, maybe you couldn't have done that painting when you were younger, when you were just Mort Kunstler. But now, you're Mort Kunstler. Well, it was one of the great experiences of my life to get to know Mort in this process and to be involved in something like this.
And one of mine also.
Thank you. And it was really a great service. It's used by history teachers in school now to actually describe the accurate painting. We unveiled the painting at the New York Historical Society, and at that time, the director of communications of the Metropolitan Museum of Art was a very famous Civil War scholar as well, told us that Mort is the most important historic artist in the United States of America today, and a man who wrote a Pulitzer Prize-winning book called Washington's Crossing, David Hackett Fitcher, said that this is the most accurate portrayal of what transpired on that night of Washington crossing Delaware in the over 200-year history of the United States of America. Mort is a national treasure, as Steve pointed out, because he's taking these important moments in history and showing them to us in accurate ways of what they represent in our nation's history. The story of Washington crossing the Delaware, which we all heard as kids, and we don't really know the whole story, it's been an inspiration for my life, because I've been knocked down pretty bad in my life, and I'm happy to come back up as well. But it should be an inspiration for all of us to just keep on going, because if we keep on pushing and keep on fighting for the things that we believe in, we'll ultimately succeed. So Mort, thank you for doing this for all of us. Thank you.